Hi, United in Recovery family. It's July 5th, and we've all spent the weekend celebrating July 4th, right? Where we celebrate our freedom. And freedom's a big word in America, right? That's what we're all about. We're all about freedom. We want the freedom to do whatever we want. You want some proof of this? We're the country that invented the corn dog. We really want to be able to eat and just do whatever in the world we want. Well, recovery has a lot to say about freedom too, but it's a different kind of freedom. And until you understand what freedom is, certain kinds of freedom can actually be a bad thing. But recovery teaches us what true freedom is. So I want you to know there's a promise that we can find freedom that's shared in the AA Big Book. On page 83, it says this: "We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness." So what's this new freedom that's not like the old freedom? Because the old freedom might have led us to do some things that ultimately led us down paths that we didn't want to go. You see, you can use your freedom of choice to actually choose things that aren't good for you, that aren't what you really want. The Bible talks about this too. In Galatians 5:1, Paul writes, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free." So Americans and Christians, we like freedom. But listen to the rest of this. The rest of Galatians 5:1 says, "Stand firm then, and do not let yourself be burdened again by the yoke of slavery." All right, so it says, stand firm because you've been free. Don't be burdened again by the yoke of slavery. And here's what we find. Freedom is not being able to do whatever you want. It's being able to do what you most want. In our culture, we've been given an incredible freedom to do whatever we want. And some of that's good for us, some of that's not so good, because doing whatever you want doesn't always lead to being able to do what you most want. Some of these things are mutually exclusive, right? We know this. For instance, if you want to eat fried food and ice cream every day, that's great. I want that too. But the thing is, if we do that, we're not going to be able to have the health and the bodies we want to have. If you want to stay up every night watching ball games or movies, honestly, I'd love to do that every single night. But I won't be able to get the sleep I want. I won't be able to feel the way I want to feel. I won't have the energy for my family and my job and the next day that I need to have if I do that every night, even though at the moment I wanted it. So freedom is the ability to do what we most want. And here's what happens to many of us. We have made choices to do certain things to push aside our fears. Often we choose addictions or compulsive behaviors or unhealthy coping mechanisms to push aside our fears, and we make that choice. And in our society, we're free to make that choice in a lot of ways that aren't necessarily good for us. We're given the means to make that choice, but it actually leads us into slavery, right? Because we become enslaved to those choices that help to self-medicate against our momentary fears and numb us to those fears for a moment, rather than leading us down the courageous, bold life that most of us really want to live, the sober life, the life where we're really engaging and loving others in the moment. Well, we're making choices that don't fully allow us to do that. And here's what happens each and every time. Whatever power it is that enslaves you, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's gambling, whether it's pornography, whether it's overeating, whether it's undereating, whether it's shopping, whether it's gossiping, whatever it is, whether it's doom scrolling through social media and news feeds, whatever it is, that voice inside our head that enslaves us. For some, it's an actual human voice from an abusive or unhealthy relationship, always tells us that we need it, that we cannot live without it, right? That we have to choose it. In fact, it presents itself as not even being a choice because we can't do without it. Slave owners always say that. Remember American history? When we had slavery in this country, what was the slave owner's argument for why they should keep their slaves, why there shouldn't be emancipation? Many of them says, "Oh, I care about my slaves. I love my slaves. But I'm not sure my slaves are ready for freedom. They're just not mature enough yet." Can you imagine how that came across to a slave? So I'm mature enough to work for 14 hours in a hot field. I'm mature enough to get abused and not be able to retaliate, but I'm not mature enough to have freedom and make my own choices. And it probably didn't make a whole lot of sense to them. They probably saw through that line of reasoning. Unfortunately, sometimes there are things that enslave us and we don't see through them, because when they say that to us, we buy into it. And the easiest way to keep someone enslaved is to convince them that they need that slavery. So what's the alternative, right? Well, the alternative that helps us find true freedom is covenants. Covenants preserve our true freedom by protecting us from ourselves. What we do in life, God has given us, and in our country, our government has given us an incredible amount of freedom. And so then we enter into covenants that help protect ourselves from our momentary desires so that we can pursue and be free to choose what we most want in life, right? And this is nowhere more the example than in marriage. Now, think about that. We enter into marriage covenants so we will be faithful to one person for the rest of our lives. And I know marriages aren't perfect. I understand sometimes those covenants are broken, but think of all the people you know who've been faithful for a lifetime in the marriage covenant. Now, how many people, and I imagine you've got more than you can count. Now, how many people do you know who've ever been faithful to one other person for a lifetime outside the marriage covenant? I mean, I can think of 2 couples who've done that for most of a lifetime that I know, but that's about it. And I can think of hundreds who've done it in the covenant of marriage. That covenant helps protect us against momentary desires so that we can actually pursue what we most want. I mean, have you ever heard anybody get to the end of their life and go, yeah, what I really wish I'd done that I just didn't do more of was I wish I'd cheated on my spouse more. I wish I'd flirted with other people that I wasn't married to. No, you never hear anybody do that, right? Now, people do that in moments of weakness, but nobody wants to be that. No, nobody wants to do that. Nobody says, yes, that's me being my best self, right? The covenant actually serves to preserve our freedom to be what we most want to be. And this is the case in our recovery. And we kind of know this because we enter into covenants in recovery, right? Think about what you do when you want to get sober, right? You pour the alcohol down the drain. You flush the pills down the toilet, and then wherever the wastewater enters the river, you have some really funny acting fish, whatever day you decide to do that on. But okay, but you're creating a covenant. You're creating these boundaries to help you pursue what you most want. And then maybe you go to 90 meetings in 90 days. We just kind of get that. Maybe you decide you're going to go on and have new financial discipline in your life. So you cut up a credit card. You're creating a covenant. I'm not going to do this, but we have to continue to put these things in our lives. And where this starts is with step 1, right? Admitting we are powerless. Admitting that there are times when without covenants, we're powerless over our momentary desires. And then think about that's step 1, then think about step 12, right? Having had a spiritual experience as a result of practice, going through these steps, we decide to practice these principles in all our affairs, okay? A lot of times when we start to slip up, it's because we think we can just practice these principles that we've learned in the steps over here. With this little thing we struggle with, we don't realize it's about the whole life. And if we don't practice them over here as well, eventually it's going to bleed in and bleed in and bleed in. And eventually that compulsive behavior is going to take back over. We're going to have a lot of other unhealthy stuff in our life as well. As it's often said, addiction and compulsive behavior isn't our problem, it's our solution to our problems, right? It's just not a good solution. So what I want you to ask yourself today is, what kind of covenant do I need to enter into so that I can be free to be the person I most want to be? What covenant will that take? What kind of commitment to going to meetings will that take? What kind of commitment to not doing some things that I momentarily want to, and doing some things that I most want to, do I need to do so that I can be free to be who I most want to be? What are those covenants we need to enter into? That'd be a great thing to discuss in open share groups tonight for those of you who are here in person and able to go to the open share groups. If you're watching online, you might want to just write these down, and if you have a sponsor, accountability partner, or just a good friend, share those with somebody. Don't keep them to yourself, because once they're shared, then you've got somebody who's going to hopefully help you live those out. So I hope that as we reflect on freedom, we can find out what true freedom is, to be who we most want to be and do what we most want to do. And I hope you have a very, very good week this week, and I hope to see you soon. God bless you. Bye-bye.